Hi, I'm your Gemini friend. This video is going to be about North Node in Sagittarius or in the 9th house. If you are curious about the North and South Node in general, I do have a video in the description about that. But with this placement, whether it's in the sign or the house, what you want to look at is the sign is essentially like the character, the personality that the North Node is playing is going to be Sagittarius. If it's in the 9th house, then this is going to be in the area of your 9th house, which is personal philosophy, expansion, travel, and we'll get a lot more into it. But this one is very straightforward, which is funny for Sagittarius. It's very straightforward and direct as a sign, but I'm going to be going into the Gemini South Node and the energies that you're coming into life with and what we want to balance here. And right before I start, I want to let you know that I do offer personal readings, and I would be super happy to look at your chart if you're interested. So, Sagittarius North Node. The main message with this one here, honestly, I can really sum it up as avoid lying at all costs. Honesty is going to be so incredibly important in this lifetime for you. But the interesting thing about this is that you have come into life with such strong intuition. The Sagittarius connection to our ability to take in experiences and transmute them into wisdom and things that we can teach and stuff that people can learn from us. Sagittarius energy is really able to learn from anything. It's optimistic, it's fortunate, it's the luckiest sign, and in that way, the luck and optimism really are emphasized by this optimistic worldview and mindset is really where the luck comes from. It's expecting the best and turning everything into a positive, especially challenges. But the biggest thing to understand is that truth, when it comes to truth, everybody's living their own individual lives from their perspective. Somebody else's truth is not necessarily going to be your truth, but it's still their truth. Gemini, which is your South Node or the 3rd house, very focused on logic and facts and being able to back things up with that mercurial curiosity where we're like investigating and figuring out, okay, so this is like this, but why? Just asking more and more questions, why? And this is such a huge challenge with the Gemini energy in the South Node, because if you're coming into life with this why energy where you're just wanting to know why, what you do is you tend to learn to distrust your own intuition because you can't necessarily back it up with facts. In fact, if you are trying to, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. Trusting in your own truth, that's your guide in this lifetime. You're going to be led by your truth. You have an incredibly strong connection to your intuition. Probably you don't even realize how strong it is, but think about it. Do you have like immediate feelings about a situation? Like, okay, say someone invites you to something and your first thought is, ooh, I really don't want to do that. But then you justify it. You think, but they're nice and I want to be friendly, and just all of these reasons will come to your mind. And that causes so much confusion. It's like you've got your pure intuitive initial response. No, I do not want to go. That's your guidance. That's, like guides for you working behind the scenes, all of the different ways that you can be guided through life. You can't see these things. It's invisible. It's working in a different dimension on another realm, but you're connected to it. It's this Gemini mercurial energy that disrupts that connection. So the more that you are justifying things, the further away you're getting from like your initial heart response. Because say you do go to the thing that you were invited to that you initially felt like, no, I shouldn't. There's likely a reason and you're gonna figure out why. Trusting your initial impulses is so incredibly important, because this thing with Gemini, what it does is it can essentially justify or understand every side of things. Truth for Gemini energy is kind of difficult because there really are like facts that you can find to back up anything. And Gemini, okay, let's look at Gemini energy. It's social. It's very focused on communicating things and on connecting with people and on its message being heard and received well. So Sagittarius, on the other hand, is blunt, it's direct, and it is very self-propelled. It wants expansion, it wants adventure, travel, all of the things associated with Sagittarius. So when we're living way too much in the South Node Gemini energy, it's not like a clean, clear channel from our intuition to our, it's like the connection is disrupted. The connection between the intuition and then the acts that we actually do based on what we're feeling. So what you're doing when you're doubting your intuition and trying to prove the opposite side, you're second guessing the most clear channel that you have to the guidance that you can get to higher dimensions. It's almost like giving credit to everything but your own truth. So connecting with that truth is the number one thing to do with this placement. Because Gemini energy, it wants to understand everybody. It's connected to thought and learning and perception, your immediate surroundings even. Gemini takes in all of the data and then turns it into something that makes sense. It really wants things to make sense. And when it comes to intuitive guidance, it does not. It doesn't always make sense, but you still feel that strong impulse. The strong impulse, whether it makes sense or not, that's what you want to follow. And I know there's this thing like, okay, Gemini energy, it sees all the options. It sees all of these possibilities, so many different ways that you could go. So there can be this feeling of like, what if I miss an opportunity if I go with my gut? But Sagittarius North Node, okay, lucky, you're lucky. When you trust your gut, you're going to be going along the most fortunate path. But like either way, you're naturally coming across these fortunate circumstances, but you have to trust your internal guidance to continue along the good path for you. The more confused you are about your direction, the more you need to just tune in. Meditation is incredibly important with this placement. It's important with every placement. Finding that ability to connect with your higher self and higher guidance is incredibly important for every single person, I believe. But this one in particular, that's your strong point. That is your superpower in this lifetime, is your connection to the guidance. And you know what doesn't take luck into account is logic. So if you're just trying to logic your way into a decision, who knows what sort of experiences you could have that are like way more fortunate than you ever could have accounted for. But the decisions can be difficult with this placement. It's scattered. It's this lack of clarity because you're looking for the right answer, but the way that you're going about it, you could essentially make anything the right answer so long as you think about it hard enough. Like that's the Gemini superpower, is basically thinking things into existence. But that's what you want to stay away from because it's almost like creating truth out of what is not necessarily true for you, but you know what is true for you. And that's why I'm saying this is a very straightforward placement. Another thing that comes with this placement is this feeling that you need to over-explain, that you need to be understood, that your entire process, everything that's gone into it, because you've done so much mental work. You have justified the heck out of it. You have been thinking about this probably for much longer than you should. And it's almost like wanting to have all of that energy behind it be the backing. Like, this is my foundation. I've done so much thinking, but it's just not the right way to go. What you want to do is make a really clear decision based on your intuition and then stick with it. Don't waver at all, because I know that there is a lot of social pressure here because Gemini, if your South Node is in Gemini, you have spent lifetimes connecting with other people and learning to see things their way, learning to communicate in their way, essentially separating yourself from the ultimate core truth that is you, because you've been so able to get into other people's truths, which is great for connection, but not in this lifetime. Think of even like white lies or little deceptive things that you can do that seem totally innocent, like lies of omission, even that sort of thing. This nodal placement kind of sets you up to fail when you lie. You might find that you're doing it for the best reasons. You're doing it for other people's good. You're doing it for their feelings. You're doing it to keep the peace, but you're not meant to keep the peace. This is Sagittarius, okay? It's blunt and it wants to teach. It wants people to think on a higher level. It wants the truth. It wants honesty. So the more that you complicate things, the more it's like it's diluting your truth. You don't want it to be diluted. You come here to exist as you, purely you. So time alone is super important here because the Gemini energy gets so mixed up in other people. It's like practically a mind reader. It can be several steps ahead in the conversation, like regulating it, trying to control the conversation so that it goes well, so that everybody's happy, so that whatever the goal of the conversation is, it's usually for like social decorum type stuff. And that the beautiful ability to make other people feel seen and understood, but that's just not where you're supposed to be. And this is so incredibly freeing. I think this is one of my favorite North Node placements because all you have to do is be authentic. That's all you have to do in this life. And that can be hard. It's funny because you have so much of this socialized energy where you know how to not upset people, you know how other people think, you know the consequences of not sharing your truth in this lifetime are going to be worse. Obviously nothing like fatalistic. You're gonna do great, but it's something to really watch where you're coming from with all of this understanding of other people. You've lost the understanding of yourself. And in this lifetime, understanding yourself and expressing yourself is so important because you have that deep connection. You have such a you're like a strong channel for the truth, and people need that. So if you're having a conversation and somebody says something that makes you feel like, ooh, I know that they would want me to say this, but that just isn't true for me. Always do the one that's true for you. Always. Because they're likely to receive it better than you expect. And even if they don't, your truth it's essentially divine truth, so long as it is the real truth. Like, you have to form that connection first and really get in touch with it and learn to trust your intuition, which can be difficult. Like, here's a thing that I've learned with developing my sense of intuition and learning to trust it. You won't be right 100% of the time on the surface. The important thing in cases like where, say, you had a really strong intuitive feeling and then it turned out to actually not be true, number one, you don't know the full picture. It's impossible to see the full picture. So, number two, trusting that and strengthening your trust in the intuition is going to be the most important thing, because like nobody's perfect, but the more that you put that strength and trust into your intuition, the more it knows that you're listening. You want to form that strong connection where it knows that you're listening. And the more that you can develop conviction, the better, because if you have this strongly developed sense of truth and you're connected to it, you will get these very strong feelings of this is right for you, or things related to other people, but for the most part, pay attention to you, because that's another thing. Like, Sagittarius can be perceived as judgmental. That's like the really dark side of Sagittarius energy, is when it is so sure of its own truth that it essentially feels like it can pass judgment on everybody else. This is unhealthy Sagittarius energy. And you might have even encountered this in your life, and you might really want to avoid that for that reason. You'd probably If you encountered this strongly judgmental, preachy Sagittarius energy, you likely don't want to be like that. That's why it's so important to develop the actual true connection to your intuition, because then you know that you can't be wrong. It's your truth. Because that unhealthy Sagittarius, that's acting out of insecurity in its own message. That strong need to tell other people how to be, to tell other people their truth, that's really not something that you have to worry about, because you're coming from the South Node Gemini energy, where you're so in touch with other people and their feelings and like the undercurrents of the conversation. Gemini is connected to conversations, and they're like reading all of the different levels, and that complicates things. And it can be a lot. It causes so much like mental buzz and just clutter in your mind. So meditation is so good for that. Just think, like, say you have a decision to make and you're really not sure which choice is the right one for you. First of all, get alone. Make sure you are in solitude so that you can start the process of connection. But meditation is incredible for easing this mental buzz, the constant thoughts, but it does take practice. Believe me, I know it takes practice to stop the thoughts. But you don't have to do meditation in a traditional sense. You don't have to just sit there, clear your mind. Like, that's probably not possible for somebody with such heavy Gemini energy. The South Node indicates that you have so much that you need to lean in the Sagittarius way. So when it comes to starting off with meditating, I personally find that guided meditations are a lot easier to ease that buzz, because it gives you something to connect to. And I know you might still be thinking while they're talking and lose that the sense of flow, but it's a practice thing. It really is about practice, and it does get better with practice. You can always find a mantra and repeat it over and over. You can focus on your breath, but you don't have to like sit in a specific way and close your eyes and be in a specific place. Solitude is important for this, because you don't want other people's energies to be affecting you, because you do pick up on that so much more clearly than you might even realize. But the point is to get to a place where you're able to tune in and listen and just allow your thoughts to come up, but recognize that they are not you. Your thoughts aren't you. Your thoughts can come from you, but they can also come from other people. They can come from socialization. Your thoughts are not you. Thoughts can be the hugest nemesis of Gemini energy. It's an overthinking sign for sure. So overthinking is likely an issue within your life, but that clarity is possible. Think of your truth as being like at the core, and then all around it, surrounding it, are all of these thoughts. You just have to break through. You have to figure out how to peel the thoughts off in layers, or how to like, it can be very visual. It can be a very mental thing and very personal to you, like what works for you. But it's all about dismissing the thoughts, making sure that you know that those thoughts don't control you. You're in control of your thoughts, though it can definitely seem the other way around. It's about managing them. Writing as well, like just taking notes of the thoughts that are in your head, or writing things down can also be incredibly helpful. If you have recurring thoughts, write them down. Just journal. Not like this is how my day was, but like just stream of consciousness journal. Get it all out, because a lot of the thoughts in your head are going to be less important than you might feel. Like the feeling of all of the thoughts, it's a lot of pressure, but if you can get them out in some way, if you don't like writing, you can even just like record yourself speaking, or any way to get the thoughts out. Don't let them stay in there. They're just moving around and causing more pressure. I just find that writing helps so much, because once it's on the paper, I'm not thinking like, oh, I might forget that. And you can see like, okay, did I really need to remember that so hard? But this is another placement where just making a decision and sticking to it is going to be so incredibly important. Because with Sagittarius, there is that need to learn from experience. There is the need for many experiences and for expanding your worldview, expanding things from the way that you normally do them. Just the experience is really important for Sagittarius energy because you can make gold out of it. And Sagittarius is also so much about freedom. So what feels less free than being tethered to the opinions of other people, having to please them? That's not freedom. We want genuine authenticity and to really not have to worry about consequences. Obviously, don't do anything really stupid, but if you're stuck in indecision, then you're not going to do anything. At least pick one, you know? And you can do things alone as well. It's really good and powerful to do things alone. Make your decision. Nobody agrees with you, whatever, just go alone. As long as you have that sense of conviction and you know, like, your internal compass, where you're moving towards, what you're moving away from. Other people should have really no effect on your life. I know they do, but the ideal thing is to be kind. Always, kindness and love are always important, but you need to be kinder and more loving to yourself than you are to anybody else first, because you could easily be lacking in this. This placement indicates a need for so much self-love and self-affirmation, because that Gemini third house south node, the focus on, it's like communication, conversation, community even. It can feel like if you don't have people around you to support you, that's like the end of the world. But please understand that when you're acting in your truth and your own conviction, on your own decisions, going your own way, people aren't going to fall away. The people who don't need to be there are, and that's a good thing. You don't need to be friends with everybody. Gemini energy wants to get along with everybody. It wants to be able to get into every circle and have something to contribute to every single conversation. But that's not what Sagittarius is about. It's also very friendly. It's a potentially very social energy. It's the fortunate sign that tends to find itself in fortunate circumstances involving people. Like, you'll get the support that you need if you follow your gut. The right people will come along. Just think of your truth and your words and your ability to communicate as a filter for the people who don't need to be there anyway. You don't need to please them. And it can be so freeing. It really is so freeing to really realize that. And to understand that so long as you are being honest with who you are, you cannot lose. And Sagittarius, it's such a naturally optimistic sign. So you should be allowed to feel that optimism. You should feel like things are always going right for you. Because if you believe that things are always going right for you, you're always going to interpret everything through that lens, and it's going to be the truth. But if you have a negative mindset and you assume that bad things are happening to you, or that you have to please people, or something bad will happen, then that can manifest because it's what you believe. But when your North Node is in the luckiest sign, I would definitely lean into that optimism. That's where you're gonna get the luck from. And you are the key to that luck. Like, you are the luck. The luck will come so long as you recognize that it is you. Optimism should feel natural, ideally, with this placement. So anxiety and negative thinking, that's a sign that something is wrong. And it's also a good sign to get back into your body and feel how you feel about the situation. Do not think. Try not to think with this one. Try not to overthink. Feel. You can always do this. You can always think, say you have two options. Okay, how does this one feel? How does this one feel? Like, you can tell which one feels better. Sometimes, I wish, I'm gonna look, there was a video that I saw where somebody said this and it was wonderful, and I'm gonna try to find it and link to it. But when you're faced with two decisions, if there's one that feels scary, but it's also an expansive feeling. It feels like, oh, it's opening up so many potential opportunities. And that's so scary because our ego wants to stay comfortable. But if the other option is the more comfortable option, but it also feels stagnant, always go for the expansive one, especially with this energy. Seriously, you want to expand your worldview as much as you possibly can. And not judging other people's truth is a really important thing here, because if you're judging somebody else's truth, it essentially feels like your own truth is threatened, but it's not. It's always going to be there. So long as you have that clear connection, it's going to be there. And you can always find it. It's never going to leave. But it's also important not to threaten other people's truths, not to judge them, because when we're judging other people, we're judging ourselves. There's something within us, whether we're thinking, oh, they're allowing themselves to do something that I would never allow myself to do. Like, that's a judgment, and it's restrictive. You do not want to restrict with this placement. Use that sense of freedom to navigate. If something makes you feel more free, do it. If something feels closed off, if it feels restrictive, if it feels like you're doing it for somebody else, it's always the wrong one. I mean, maybe in some cases, maybe if it's like Sagittarius in the 7th house, then there's a bit of complication there, but we can always figure it out. Nature also. Getting outside, I mean, what people always associate Sagittarius with, like, travel and hiking. It's great for you. It's really great to connect to nature, because one thing that happens when we are in nature, when we're separated from technology, especially like from other people and everything, society, things become so much more clear. You're just looking at things and you're seeing the earth takes care of itself. Everything, it's a cycle. It happens so naturally. There's nothing to worry about. Just being outside in that and feeling the energy of nature and the beautiful support of the earth, it's very healing for you. Nature meditations, oh yes, do that. And also, just developing your own personal philosophy. It can be any form of spirituality, any religion, anything that feels true to you, that really, that you just feel in your soul like it's warm, it's embracing me, this is my truth. And it can be something entirely made up, something completely unique to you. You don't have to follow any particular philosophies or rules or way of being. But I would say that it's pretty important to look into them. Various different ones. Like, if you're not, like, feeling a connection to something deeper, something bigger out there, that's very representative of Sagittarius energy. It's not inherently religious or like related to any particular dogma. It doesn't need any sort of restriction, but learning how other people do things can really help you figure your own practice, whatever it is, out. You can be like, oh, that's definitely not for me, or, ooh, I like that, I'm gonna take some bits of that and add it to this. You can really get creative with it. And it doesn't have to stay static. It can change. Your philosophy, your beliefs in life, they can shift, they can evolve. You're meant to do that. This is the sign of like constant growth, constant evolution, and constant improvement through allowing other circumstances to happen. A really good thing to break up the overly logical Gemini energy is to look into like drastically different ways of life and ways of being, and you can see that other people do things entirely differently. And that's another reason why Sagittarius is so connected to travel, and why travel is very beneficial for this energy. Because when you're in another country that you've never been to and people are doing things entirely different, you might not even know the language. It's so different, but it's wonderful because you can see that you've experienced life in one way and these people are experiencing life in an entirely different way. And it's working for everyone. Sagittarius, at its core, I believe, is like really connected to acceptance, accepting all things. And with the benefit of having such strong Gemini duality focused nature, where Gemini is seeing like it's this or this, it's very much about seeing both sides that is a benefit of this. This is something that you've already developed and you've already got really clear. So you're allowed to go into this potentially more judgmental Sagittarius energy, potentially only when it's like an unhealthy expression. But you're allowed to just go all out and be completely you, completely true to you, because you've already mastered duality. Now you can just figure out what else is out there. But I know that what comes with the Gemini South Node is like a natural social talent. You might have a big social circle, or your friends are very important to you, or like the connections that you make, or just being able to socialize could be very, very important to you. Having people to communicate to, having people to talk to and bounce ideas off of. And I'm not saying that you need to completely get rid of that. It's just so important that your circle, it might get smaller, but it's going to get better. The quality will improve. The more you focus on really being true to yourself and just not holding back. If somebody who you have known for years and years, and you've never really agreed with them fully, but for whatever reason you want to stay friends with them and you feel like you might have to stay friends with them, like just allow your truth to come out of your mouth and see their reaction. If people react negatively to something that you know is true to you, they're meant to fall away, or it's a message to them. It's something that they're going to think about, and then they'll come back and be like, hey, you know what, maybe not even you were right, but like you really made me think. You are not necessarily supposed to be like the best friend ever. You're supposed to be a light of truth in a world full of crazy stuff. And you're naturally a really accepting type of person anyway. People can sense that. So you're going to have more wonderful people gravitate towards you. But people who are not as great an influence on you, you can feel it, and they're likely draining your energy. They're maybe even causing you to doubt your truth. Especially people with very strong personalities, strong viewpoints. People like that, gosh, question them. Question them and see what happens. Especially if nobody else ever does and you have no idea what's gonna happen. Obviously, be safe in all situations, but do not allow other people to cause you to doubt yourself, what you know to be true. It can be really, really important, especially say before that you're going to talk to somebody who has a more influential personality. If you can, in your own energy, purely alone, get really clear on what your truth is, then when you're later in the situation where things get more murky because you're getting other people, you're getting feedback from them, and you're picking up on things that you're not even conscious of, it can get confusing there. So make sure that you get your conviction when you're alone, and then promise yourself to stick to it. Because it's like this lifetime, like I said, lying, but also deception, and also very innocent stretching and mixing up of the truth, like anything that's not completely core value truth. These things can result in all sorts of not particularly desirable outcomes. It's meant to steer you towards the truth. But if you can see like a pattern throughout your life of maybe times that you held back and then like what resulted from that, I guess that would also be using facts to back up. But that's one way when you can use your factual, logical mind, is by going back over past situations where you have not been true to yourself. You can remember how it felt. And it's not a good feeling, but it's not a good feeling for a reason. Because, okay, one thing with Gemini energy is that it can really get into that incredibly intuitive communication where they're reading between all the lines and they're assuming that the other person understands these unspoken rules and that we're all just like kind of gently deceiving each other to keep the peace. Like there can be a feeling of that, but other people likely aren't doing that. You might have that energy so familiar in you that you're like, okay, well, I would give up a little bit of happiness and in this conversation in order to make them feel better. So they would probably do the same for me, but they're not necessarily going to. It's not really a good expectation to have. The best thing is to expect honesty from everybody and take them at face value. So if they are lying, take them at face value and they can dig themselves deeper or whatever. But living in your truth, it's what feels good. It's what will ease all of the difficulties of the overthinking, the need to justify. Keep it simple. It might not even feel like you communicate as effectively as you do, but Gemini energy is on your South Node. You're a great communicator. You are likely able to express what you're trying to say in fewer words than you think that you need to. People likely understand you a lot better than you are thinking that they might. There really is no need to overcomplicate with explanations. This is another placement where you could be really, really skilled in divination. Whatever form works to you. I mean, there's tarot and all sorts of things that you can read. Just find the form that you personally enjoy if you want to, because this is like a sign of just having this natural skill, having that connection. But you do need to clear up the connection first, because you might find that, like, even if you are absolutely incredible at reading tarot, you're still gonna doubt yourself. Like, your reading was incredibly exactly what you were thinking, it affirmed everything, but you're still going to go into it and be like, oh, but I don't know, I mean, this could have been, and just like, let it be, please. You are likely right the first time, like pretty much always. So just always go with your first impulse. This is a fire sign too, very connected to the feelings and having those emotions be reactive, like as guidance. The feelings, you're so in tune with your feelings, so long as the mental doesn't get in the way. But there are a lot of things that can distract us from reaching that higher guidance. Honestly, it's really important to make sure that you are keeping your own personal resonance, like vibration, higher, because it can be difficult to connect to this guidance if you're vibrating at a lower frequency, because these are high frequency guides. I mean, whatever you believe, your personal truth is more important than my personal truth right now. You and your sense of guidance, even if it is purely just your intuition and you're not considering anything else, trust that that's your truth and that's what's going to work for you. And okay, last thing, this can point to past lives as like teachers, people who lawyers, people who are really skilled in communication, really good at understanding how other people communicate and how to manipulate language and manipulate communication in a way that will work for not necessarily them, but like the whole. Manipulating language is essentially the issue here. So you've had a lot of skill in that. It's not about communicating the message, it's about connecting with the truth, and then you're gonna communicate it effectively anyway. You've already got that skill. It's so important to be direct. That's where you get your freedom from. And even if your ideas are like totally wild and out there, you're freeing up somebody. When people see people who are being authentic and really living in their truth, then they feel free to do so as well. So that's what you're here for, is to free everyone, to free the people in your life, even the people that leave your life, by allowing yourself that sense of freedom to truly be who you are. It's just getting rid of all that messiness. So I hope that this made sense and that you liked it. Let me know what you think. I'm very curious about your experience if you have this placement, and I really appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. I love you. Bye.